Scary telling.
My eyes slowly open, and the first thing I see is the ceiling of a cold, sterile room. I try to move, but my body doesn't respond the way it used to. Panic sets in as I realize something is very wrong. I look down and see metal plating where skin and muscle used to be. My arms, legs, and chest are now fused with mechanical components. What's happening to me? I think to myself. Suddenly, I hear footsteps approaching the door. I try to move, but my body doesn't respond the way it used to. The door slides open, revealing a group of people in lab coats. "Welcome back to the land of the living," one of them says with a smirk. I struggle to sit up, but one of the lab-coated figures steps forward and injects me with something that sends me back into a deep sleep. The next time I wake up, I'm in a different room. This one is dimly lit and filled with the rusted carcasses of old cars. My uncle is there, standing over me. "Hey, kiddo. How are you feeling?" he asks, his voice betraying his concern. "I don't know what's going on," I say, trying to make sense of my situation. My uncle sits down next to me and explains the situation. He tells me that I was in a terrible accident and that the only way to save me was to fuse my body with the remains of his old barchetta. "I'm sorry, I had no other choice," he says, looking away from me. I'm in shock. I can't believe that I've been transformed into some sort of cyborg. My uncle gives me some time to process everything before taking me to the garage where the barchetta is stored. As we approach the car, I feel a strange sense of familiarity. The smell of oil and leather fills my nose, and I suddenly remember all the times my uncle took me for joyrides in the car when I was younger. I can feel the power of the engine pulsing through my body as I step inside. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. "Does it still run?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. My uncle smiles and nods. He starts the engine, and I can feel the rumble of it beneath me. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before. The car roars to life, and we take it out for a spin. For the first time since waking up, I feel alive. The wind rushes past me, and I can hear the engine humming in my ears. It's an incredible feeling, and I know that I want more. As we return to the garage, my uncle tells me that we need to keep my new abilities a secret. The government won't be happy if they find out about me. I nod, understanding the gravity of the situation. Over the next few weeks, my uncle teaches me how to control my new body. I can run faster than any human, jump higher than any athlete, and lift more than any weightlifter. It's exhilarating, but I know that I need to keep it under wraps. But then one day, my uncle tells me that he needs my help. He wants me to help him build an army of machine men to fight back against the government. I'm hesitant at first, but he convinces me that it's the right thing to do. And so, we begin to collect wrecked police vehicles, harvesting their parts to build our army. As we begin our mission to build an army of machine men, my uncle and I start to venture further and further out of the city, scouring junkyards and abandoned lots for vehicles that we can harvest for parts. Our first few excursions are relatively uneventful, but as we begin to accumulate more and more parts, we start to draw the attention of local law enforcement. It starts with a few police cruisers following us at a distance, but soon they're pulling us over and searching our vehicle for contraband. We play it cool, telling them that we're just collectors, but we know that they're suspicious. One day, as we're driving down a deserted stretch of road, we spot a small convoy of police vehicles approaching us. We try to turn around and make a run for it, but they're too fast. As we come to a stop, they surround us, guns drawn. "Get out of the car," one of the officers barks. We comply, slowly stepping out of the barchetta. The officers look at us with a mix of confusion and fear. "What the hell are you?" one of them asks, eyeing my mechanical body. Before I can answer, my uncle jumps to my defense. He explains that I was in a terrible accident and that the barchetta was the only way to save me. The officers seem skeptical, but they let us go. From that day forward, we become more careful, avoiding law enforcement at all costs. We start to venture out of the city and into the surrounding countryside, where we can collect parts without drawing too much attention. As we accumulate more and more parts, we begin to build our army of machine men. My uncle teaches me how to assemble them, and soon we have a small army of robots at our disposal. But we know that it's not enough. We need more machines if we're going to have any chance of fighting back against the government. So we start to take more risks, venturing into more heavily guarded areas to collect parts. One night, as we're driving through an industrial park, we spot a massive warehouse filled with police vehicles. We know that it's a trap, but we can't resist the temptation. We sneak in under the cover of darkness, working quickly to collect as many parts as we can. But we're not fast enough. The police arrive, and we find ourselves in a pitched battle, fighting for our lives. In the end, we manage to escape, but we're badly wounded. We return to our hideout, licking our wounds and counting our losses. Despite the danger, we know that we can't give up. We have to keep going, keep fighting, no matter the cost. Our army of machine men grows, and we become more and more convinced that we can overthrow the government and free ourselves from their tyranny. Our army of machine men is growing, and we're becoming more confident in our abilities to fight back against the government. We start to plan our next move, strategizing how we can take down the police force and free ourselves from their control. Our plan is simple but effective. We'll launch a coordinated attack on the government's motor pool, destroying as many police vehicles as we can and crippling their ability to respond to our actions. The day of the attack arrives, and we're all nervous. We know that we're taking a huge risk, but we're determined to fight for our freedom. We load up our machine men into a convoy of trucks and vans, driving towards the motor pool in the dead of night. As we approach the motor pool, we can see the outlines of dozens of police vehicles parked outside. We pull over to the side of the road, and my uncle hands me a remote control. "Are you ready?" he asks, looking at me with a mix of excitement and fear. I nod, gripping the remote tightly. My uncle gives the signal, and we start our attack. I press the button on the remote, and our machine men spring to life. They charge towards the motor pool, leaping over fences and dodging gunfire. The police are caught off guard, and they scramble to respond to our attack. But it's too late. Our machine men are too fast and too powerful. They start tearing apart police vehicles, ripping them to shreds with their bare hands. I watch from a distance, feeling a sense of exhilaration and horror. The sound of metal being torn apart fills the air, and I can feel the vibrations in my bones. But then something goes wrong. The police start to rally, and they start shooting at our machine men. One of them is hit, and it falls to the ground, sparks flying from its body. I feel a surge of anger and fear. These machines are all I have left, and I'm not going to let them die. I run towards the motor pool, dodging gunfire as I go. When I arrive, I see that my machine men are being overwhelmed. They're taking too much damage, and I know that I need to act fast. I take a deep breath, focusing all my energy on one thing: destruction. I let out a primal roar, and my body surges forward. The police start shooting at me, but their bullets bounce off my metal plating. I smash into their vehicles, tearing them apart with my bare hands. The battle is fierce, and I can feel myself getting weaker with each passing moment. But I don't stop. I keep fighting, knowing that my life depends on it. Finally, the battle is won. The police are defeated, and we've achieved our objective. But at what cost? Our army of machine men is decimated, and we're left with only a handful of survivors. We return to our hideout, battered and bruised. But we're also proud. We've shown the government that we won't back down, that we won't be held down by their laws and regulations. As we nurse our wounds, we start to plan our next move. We know that the government will be coming for us, and we need to be ready for whatever they throw our way. Our army may be small, but we're determined to win this fight, no matter what it takes. As we regroup after our successful attack on the government's motor pool, tensions start to rise within our small group of rebels. There's a sense of paranoia and distrust that permeates everything we do, and we start to turn on each other. It starts with small things, arguments over how to allocate resources, disputes over who should be in charge. But soon, it becomes more serious. Accusations of betrayal and sabotage start to fly, and we start to suspect that someone in our midst is working with the government. I try to ignore the rumors, focusing on our mission to overthrow the government. But as the days go on, I start to notice things that make me suspicious. Little things, like the way one of our members keeps glancing at their phone or the way another one seems to be constantly whispering to themselves. I try to confront them, but they deny everything. They tell me that I'm being paranoid, that the stress of our situation is getting to me. But I know that something isn't right. Then, one night, everything comes to a head. We're all sitting around the table, discussing our next move, when one of our members pulls out a gun. Who's the traitor? They demand, their eyes darting around the room. We all freeze, unsure of what to do. But before we can react, the gun goes off. I watch in horror as one of our members falls to the ground, blood spreading across the floor. The shooter turns to me, their eyes wild with fear and anger. "You know who it is, don't you?" they say, their voice trembling. I try to back away, but they follow me, the gun trained on my head. I can feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I know that I'm running out of time. But then, suddenly, the door bursts open, and a group of government agents storms into the room. They surround us, guns drawn, and the shooter drops their weapon, surrendering without a fight. It turns out that they were the traitor all along, working with the government to infiltrate our group and gather information. I feel sick to my stomach, knowing that we've been betrayed by one of our own. The government agents start to round us up, cuffing us and leading us out of the hideout. I look around, trying to find my uncle, but he's nowhere to be found. As I'm led away, I feel a sense of hopelessness wash over me. Our rebellion has been crushed, and I don't know what the future holds for me or for the rest of the machine men. All I can do is pray that somehow, someway, we'll find a way to fight back and reclaim our freedom. I'm taken to a high-security government facility where I'm interrogated for hours on end. They want to know everything, who I am, where I came from, and what I know about the rebellion. I try to resist, but they have ways of making me talk. They subject me to all sorts of torture and experimentation, pushing me to my limits. But I refuse to give in. Days turn into weeks, and I start to lose track of time. I'm locked in a small cell, with nothing to do but stare at the walls and wait for the next round of questioning. But then, one day, everything changes. I'm taken out of my cell and led down a long corridor. I'm not sure what's happening, but I can sense that something is different. As we reach the end of the corridor, I see a group of people waiting for me. They're dressed in black, with masks covering their faces. "Follow us," one of them says, beckoning me forward. I don't know what to do, but I follow them anyway. We move quickly, rushing down staircases and through back hallways. I can hear the sound of alarms blaring in the distance, and I know that we're in the middle of a prison break. We finally reach an exit, and the group leads me outside. We're in the middle of a forest, with no signs of civilization anywhere in sight. But I can sense that we're not safe yet. "Come on," one of the people says, leading me to a waiting vehicle. We have to move fast. We pile into the vehicle and start driving, swerving through back roads and alleys. I can hear the sound of sirens in the distance, and I know that the government is on our tail. But somehow, miraculously, we manage to evade them. We drive for hours until we're finally far enough away from the government's reach. As we come to a stop, the people start to debrief me. They tell me that they're part of a larger rebellion, one that's been fighting the government for years. "We need your help," one of them says. "We need your knowledge of the machines, your skills, your expertise. We can't win this fight alone." I hesitate for a moment, unsure of what to do. But then, I remember everything that I've been through, the torture, the experimentation, the betrayal. I know that I can't go back to the life I had before. I know that I have to fight back. "I'm in," I say, looking at the group with determination. "Whatever it takes." And with that, my new life as a rebel begins.